It is April 3rd, 1968, and I'm going to present to you important pieces of my life. I will tell you about my childhood and how I have made an impact on the civil rights movement and stopped segregation in many places. I'm honored that God would allow me to make a difference in our world. I was born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. I lived with my father, Michael King Sr., my mother, Alberta Williams, my older sister, Willie Christine, and my younger brother, Alfred Daniel. My name when I was born was Michael King Jr., but later my father changed his own name because he was inspired by Martin Luther, who began the Protestant Reformation. Since he changed his name, he also changed my name so that I would stay a junior. As a boy, I enjoyed playing baseball, basketball, and even riding bikes with my friends. I also had fun playing football with them and was even quarterback for my high school football team. My grandfather and my uncle were both preachers. My father was also a preacher and had his own church. I enjoyed singing with my siblings there. One of my first encounters with segregation was the day I was told I could no longer play with two of my friends because they were white and I was black. That made me feel discouraged. My mom sat me down and explained to me that black people were brought into America and sold into slavery. She also told me that most white people thought black people were not equals. I started seeing signs that said white only. They were on buses, parks, restrooms, and even schools. I learned to read before I was old enough to go to school. A few of my favorite people to read about were Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and George Washington Carver. I skipped the 9th and 12th grade and was only 15 years old when I graduated high school and attended Morehouse College. Later, I received a doctorate of theology from Boston University. When I was there, I met a beautiful woman named Coretta Scott. She was studying music. We married and had 4 children, Martin Luther King III, Dexter Scott, Yolanda, and Bernice. In 1954, I began my first job as a pastor in Montgomery, Alabama. 1 year later, Rosa Parks, who was a black woman, calmly refused to give up her seat for a white man on a bus. The white man asked again, but she still refused. Then the bus driver asked her, but she still refused. So she was arrested that day for not giving up her seat. I knew that wasn't right, so I ended my job as a pastor and began leading peaceful protests throughout the city. I was inspired by Gandhi, who was an Indian leader. He led peaceful protests and met hate with nonviolence, so I started leading peaceful protests just like him. Nonviolence means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. The first protest I led was the Montgomery bus boycott. Black people all throughout the city refused to ride the buses for nearly a year, which put several buses out of business. I stated during the protest, there comes a time when people get tired of being kicked about. One night while I was at a meeting, someone threw a bomb into my house. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but all of my followers were angry. I told them to go home peacefully. I said we must love our white brothers. We must meet hate with love. I have decided to stick with love because hate is too great a burden to bear. Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Because if we do an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, we will be a blind and toothless nation. After the boycott ended, there were no more white-only sections on buses. 2 years later, while I was at Blumstein's department store doing a book signing for my latest book called Stride Toward Freedom, a black woman walked up to me. She asked me who I was, and after I replied, she told me that she had been looking for me for 5 years. Then she stabbed a 7-inch letter opener into my chest, barely missing my heart. I was immediately rushed to the hospital where they performed emergency surgery to save my life. After that, I decided to move back to Atlanta about 3 years later. I continued to lead peaceful protests across Atlanta. Some of the first protests in Atlanta were against white-only waiting rooms, lunch counters, and restrooms. One day, I met Billy Graham, a courageous white preacher who was also against segregation. Graham himself personally removed the ropes at his meetings that were meant to divide whites from blacks. On August 28, 1963, many leaders spoke out against segregation. I was the last speaker that night. We all presented our speeches in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. About 250,000 people were there. In my speech, I stated, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have accomplished more in my 39 years than most people who have lived twice as long. I hope to continue to teach people that we are all created as equals, even if we look different. I have been arrested 29 times and been to court. Not only myself, but my family has also been brutally persecuted. Now, my dear brothers, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward, because our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. And a man who won't die for something is not fit to live, so we must use time creatively, because forgiveness is not an occasional act, it is a constant attitude. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain, and I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as people, will get to the promised land. And I'm so happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I am not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. I am Martin Luther King, Jr.
Hello, my name is Diana Spencer. I was born July 1st, 1961. I was not a princess when I was born, but I was a member of Great Britain's oldest and most important families. I had been close to the royal family for more than 500 years. I had 4 brothers and sisters. We spent our childhood at Park House, a large estate in Norfolk, England. My bedroom in the Park House overlooks acres of open fields filled with cows. During my childhood, me and my siblings occasionally went to the Sandringham Palace for lunch or to watch a movie with the royal family. However, since I am 13 years younger than Prince Charles, I never saw him at these outings. I adored animals, so since my boarding school allowed animals, I had a guinea pig and I won a ribbon for taking best care of my pet. I also enjoyed horseback riding until I fell off the horse and broke my arm. After that, I was no longer comfortable on a horse. Although I loved the social side of school, I was frustrated with my studies. I struggled to learn math and science, but I liked art and music. Despite my poor grades, I did shine in athletics. In 1977, I met Prince Charles for the first time. There was nothing glamorous about the meeting. I left West Point when I was 16 years old. Like most girls my age, I had taken exams to see if I was qualified to continue school or go to college. I failed my exams twice and had to leave school. I was eager to live on my own, but my parents said I was too immature to live on my own. So I stayed with my parents until the summer of 1979 when they bought me a flat that cost £500. It was located at 60 Colquhoun Court in a fashionable and exclusive area of London known as South Kensington. I shared the apartment with 3 friends. Although I did not need money because all of my expenses were paid for by my parents, I wanted to find a job. I loved to babysit. My gift for working with children was evident from the start. I was very happy with my life in London during 1979 and 1980. I enjoyed long walks, fishing trips, and barbecues with Charles and the royal family. One afternoon when Charles and I were on a fishing trip, I saw the reflection of a pair of binoculars in the bushes across the river. A reporter and a photographer were hiding there, hoping to find out the identity of Prince Charles' latest girlfriend. Although I tried to cover my face with a scarf, it didn't take long for the press to figure out who I was. From then on, my life would never be the same. Reporters waited outside my apartment and followed me everywhere. One photographer even rented the apartment across the street so he could watch my bedroom. Reporters constantly called my apartment, even in the middle of the night, to try to get an interview or even confirm that Charles and I were dating. Through everything, I remained calm and polite. The public grew to adore me. I spent a lot of time with Prince Charles, including weekends at various homes owned by the royal family. With each meeting, the public and the press became more sure that I was the one who would finally be Prince Charles' wife. Since I had never had a serious boyfriend, there was no scandals or secrets in my past that could put the relationship in bad light. I was finally in love with Prince Charles, and he seemed to care for me too. The general feeling between the royal family and court advisors was that Charles and I couldn't make a more perfect match. Finally, on February 6, 1981, Prince Charles invited me to the Windsor Castle for dinner and asked me to marry him. I accepted immediately, even after Charles warned me about the tremendous pressure of life in the royal family. After our engagement photos, a reporter asked if we were really in love. I said, yes, I love Charles. Charles replied, yes, whatever love means. I moved out of my apartment a week later and moved into a suite in Buckingham Palace. I spent my days learning the royal protocol, like how to talk to the public, how to shake hands, how to treat the household servants, and even how to wave to the crowd. The Queen introduced me to proper royal behavior. I also met with fashion designers who would update my image from shy teacher's assistant to glamorous princess. The pressure of learning to be royal was overwhelming. It didn't help that I had very little time to spend with Charles. Besides learning everything, I had to plan for my wedding. Everyone was surprised that I picked 2 unknown designers to make my wedding dress. Charles and I announced that our wedding would be held at St. Paul's Cathedral. I could not always keep smiling because the stress of planning the wedding and my sense of loneliness within the royal family pushed me too far. Just a few days before the wedding, I was photographed bursting into tears watching Charles play polo. What the public didn't know that was my tears were out of jealousy. For many years, Charles had been close to a woman named Camilla Bowles. The friendship between them made me jealous and unhappy. I knew after the polo match Charles was going to see Camilla and give her a gift. I was so upset at this I told my sister I was thinking about calling off the wedding. However, everyone knew it was too late for that. The wedding was only a few days away. All the preparations had been made and the stores were filled with pictures and souvenirs with our faces on it. At last, the big day, July 29, 1981. I met with my dress designers and hairdressers and makeup artists. By the time they were done, I indeed looked like a fairy tale princess. Me and my father climbed into a horse-drawn glass coach that would carry us through the streets of London to St. Paul's Cathedral. I had 2 kids, Prince William, who was born June 21st, 1981, and Prince Harry, who was born September 15th, 1984. I was no longer just a superstar, I was a fashion icon, which made me popular all over the world. I did charities for AIDS patients and landmine victims. I even auctioned off my old dresses and donated the money to charity. After I got divorced, my new boyfriend Dottie invited me to Paris for a weekend vacation. Although we had only known each other for 2 weeks, we were very close. I told my friend that I had never been happier. On August 30th, 1997, Dottie and I arrived in Paris. The visit would be a short one as I planned to return to London the next day to see my sons. Dottie and I arrived at a hotel called the Ritz. We planned to We ordered a meal at the hotel's restaurant, but once again the paparazzi seemed too close. Around 10 p.m., Dottie and I disappeared upstairs to eat our dinner in a private suite away from the public eye. After dinner, Dottie and I decided to leave the hotel through the back entrance. Accompanying us was Henry Paul, the driver, and Dottie's bodyguard. Henry pulled up to the back entrance in a Mercedes, and we quickly got inside. The car pulled away at 12:20 on the morning of August 31st. Despite our efforts, a group of photographers figured out what was going on and waited at the Ritz back entrance. As soon as the car pulled away, they followed. By the time the car pulled onto the street, at least 6 cars and motorcycles were following us. Henry ran a red light and zigzagged through traffic, picking up speed as he headed toward the Seine River. An eyewitness said we were going about 100 miles per hour, which was well over Paris's speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Despite the high speeds, only Dottie's bodyguard was wearing a seatbelt. Henry drove into the Alma Tunnel, which crosses under the Seine River. The car was traveling so fast it almost became airborne when it hit a dip in the road. As Henry struggled to control the car, he saw a small white car in front of him. Henry swerved widely to avoid hitting it, but it was too late to avoid a terrible tragedy. The Mercedes clipped the white car, breaking its taillight as well as the taillight on the Mercedes. The Mercedes brushed against one of the columns with a deafening crash. Henry and Dottie were instantly killed by massive injuries to their chest, legs, and head. I was badly injured but still alive. I was treated on the scene for about 45 minutes before arriving at the hospital. Although I did not seem badly injured, I was bleeding internally. The doctors at the hospital tried hard to save me. I died at about 4 a.m. on August 31st, 1997. People all over the world were devastated by my death, and they put flowers outside the Kensington Palace. On September 6, 1997, the streets of London were filled with people as my coffin was carried across the street in a horse-drawn carriage.
I think they all deserve a big round of applause. It's done. Before we finish tonight, I have some certificates that I want to award. We're going to start off with the prizes for the charts. So during the school year, like I mentioned before, they have these charts. And during the week, what they have to do is copy them. And so you have chart A, which is the sentence classifications, but then you have a chart on adverbs, you have a chart on nouns, you have a chart on interjections, what's another one? Pronouns, verbs. And so the students, week by week, copy these charts. Sometimes it's written, they write it out. Sometimes they say it. It's just whatever works best for that student. And the second half of this year, we had a competition to see who could write out / say the most charts. So that's what I'm going to award right now. Our third prize winner is not here this evening, but that is Zadok Fabrizio. Our second prize goes to Caroline Lane. She copied over 1,200 charts. This is from January on. And then the first prize goes to Emily Kursko, who has done over 5,000, 7,000. All right, next, are all the moms here? Yeah. I want you guys to come up, please. I want you to award your certificates to your children, if you can. If the mom can't, that works too. I have them in alphabetical order, so as I say your child's name, you guys can just come up and mom will give you your certificate. I have on here the charts that you've mastered this year, and some moms aren't here, so dads are going to do it. All right, the first one is Gavin Bowden, and I'm sorry. The students do 3 years of essentials, and it starts in 4th grade through 6th grade, and they repeat the same material over the course of 3 years, and every year they dig a little bit deeper into the English language. So for first tour for essentials, cycle 3, we want to award it to Gavin Bowden. Next, we have Luke Cox. And then we have Lydia Cox. Next, we have Laurel Davis. And then we have Rachel Davis. These are all students who have completed their first tour. We have Zadok is not here tonight. Okay. We have Karis Hollander. And then we have Caroline Lane. And then for our second tour, so these are kids who have been in the program, this is their second year. We have Emily Kurzko. And then we have Liam Kurzko. And then we have Eric Sandquist. All right, well, that concludes our evening. I will hand it over to Heather.
All right, we would like to invite everybody to come and join us in the fellowship hall. We have food for everyone, and we'd love for you guys to be there with us. Right before I wrap up, though, I want to just share one of CC's visions, so Classical Conversations. One of the goals and one of the hopes is that we would be redeeming 2 generations' education. So not just these kids, these students are learning so much, but we as parents getting to walk alongside them and teaching them too, we're learning so much as well. So I have learned so much walking through with my daughter this year, and I hope you guys were able to see even just a little glimpse of what we've been working on. This stuff that they're doing right here, I didn't do till I was a senior in high school, I think. So it's amazing to see that we're going ahead now and giving them these tools to learn and to learn the beauty and the richness of the English language. So I hope tonight was encouraging and inspiring for you guys, you kiddos who are going to be in this program in the next couple of years. I hope this was something that was amazing for you to see and to look forward to as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm going to ask my husband to come, and he's going to pray for just to close up and to pray for our food and our fellowship together.
Okay. Oh, maybe there it is. Yeah, I can't just not talk. So just wanted to thank who has, hey, there we go, again. I wanted to thank everybody who has just come around my wife. And I know all of the moms out there and the tutors, and so thankful for you. For those of you who witnessed this, you saw part of the process. I think if you were to look at what classical education is, and I'm not going to give a big spiel here, but it's the pursuit of wisdom and virtue through the contemplation of what is true and good and beautiful. And that's really what classical education boils down to. Classical Conversations makes it easy. You just say, we want to know God and make Him known, right? And so that's what I appreciate about classical education and CC as well. It's a realization of whenever we're studying these faces of history, whenever they spent so many hours doing the research,